So this is Pakistan Studies, Paper 1, Summer 2016, History and Culture of Pakistan. This is insert A, source A, which states the cyclone that broke Pakistan's back. It's talking about a cyclone Bhola that hit East Pakistan on the 12th of November 1970. It is said to have wiped out villages, destroyed crops, and killed nearly 1 million people. So it had basically nearly 85% of the area was destroyed. There were 75% of the population receiving food and relief. The historians believed that this happened because of the mismanagement of the government. These are some of the points that can be taken out from this article. So in the first question, it states that study the source, insert carefully, and then answer the questions which follow. So the first part is, according to source A, what problems were caused by Cyclone Bola? As discussed, the major problems that were caused by the cyclone were that there were 1 million people who had died, a large number of crops were destroyed, villages and livestock were destroyed, ill feeling was there was ill feeling towards West Pakistan. Now, the second part of the question is, what does source B tell us about the outcome of the conflict in East Pakistan and West Pakistan? Now, apparently, they had removed the source, and it basically just states that it was signing the peace treaty by high ranking officers. So, even from that, you can basically state the basic facts, which were that the conflict between East and West Pakistan, this event was one of the major events in the history of the two countries. They were signing a peace treaty, and this basically led to the formation of Bangladesh. Now, C part, why did the victory of Awami League in 1970 elections in Pakistan cause a constitutional crisis? Now, the 1970 election is said to be one of the most fairest elections of the country, yet it was the precursor for the division of the country. Now, in the 1970 election, the president at the time, General Yahya Khan, basically refused Mujibur Rahman to take office, even though Awami League won the majority seats in the parliament. And he refused to basically give them the rights to form a government. Bhutto basically was of the view that since his party had won most seats in West Pakistan, he would be able to basically satiate his thirst for power by just stating that there are different factions and one side will be governed by West Pakistan, which is Bhutto's party, and East Pakistan will be governed by Mujibur Rahman, Awami League. And because of that, the government crumbled. So these are some of the points which are basically about the fact that during the elections, rivalries were created, hence no formal hence no formal government could be formed. No. So this is the C part. Now D part talks about The relationship with Bangladesh. How successful have relations been between Pakistan and Bangladesh from 1971 to 1999? Now, this is important. The date, the era is from 1971 to 1999, which basically means that you have to take care of the fact that after the creation of Bangladesh, talk a little bit about the war, and then state both sides of the diplomatic relation. Basically, what you have to do is make sure that you highlight that what were the successful things between the two. Like in 1974, Bhutto invited Mujibur Rahman and Pakistan formally recognized Bangladesh in Lahore. 1974 is also the time when the Islamic conference took place. And then in 1975, they formally exchanged ambassadors. And then in 1985 to 88, due to a very severe weather outbreak in Bangladesh, aid was provided to the victims from Pakistan. Now, a failure is in 1971, Pakistan officially withdrew its membership from the Commonwealth and SEATO. Then, in Zulfikar Ali Bhutto could not agree on asset distribution when he went in 1975. So that was a problem as well. And then there was a disagreement over the rule of non Bengalis. Now, in Bangladesh, where people were of the view that Bengalis should be the dominant force, they marginalized non Bengalis, which led to a lot of problems on a larger scale. Now, in section B, there are two questions that we have done. One is question number 2, which basically states part A is what was Kanpur and what happened in Kanpur in 1857. Now this is a 4-mark question. It's talking about an incident that happened during the War of Independence. So what you basically need to do is just make sure that you highlight the fact that there was an uprising by Nana Sahab, an Indian leader who basically rose against the British troops. They killed over 300 women and children, and British then later took revenge, and but Nana Sahab escaped. Part B of the same question is explain the appeal of India to the East India Company during the early 17th century. Now, this is a very straightforward question. It is pretty obviously stated in the book as well, but the fact is that it has 7 marks. So what you have to do is basically talk about it in a little detail. We have just illustrated some points which you can elaborate on. For example, India had untapped potential, which means that India so that basically means that India was of great value to the Europeans, especially the British. Then there was this new expansion opportunity which basically gave them a chance to discover more sea routes. And then obviously the fact that there were spices to have, and they needed to basically increase their trade. So these are some of the reasons. If these are elaborated on with detail, full marks can be gotten. Now in part C, was the introduction of roller. And did Shah Waliullah contribute more to the spread of Islam than anyone else in the subcontinent? Now, these sort of questions are obviously talking about one aspect, but actually want you to highlight how different things happened and how different people basically took it upon themselves to make Islam an influential religion in the subcontinent. Now, Shah Waliullah did spread Islam, but explain how Shah Waliullah was not the only one. Talk about Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan and his uh, fight for the rights of the Muslims, and talk about Haji Shariatullah and his concept of jihad against the British. All of these things can be elaborated on in detail to garner 14 marks. Now, question number 3, part A. What were the terms of the Indian Council Act? Terms of the Indian Council Act in 1909 are also called, the Council Act is also called as Parliamentary Reforms. It was basically the fact that in the parliament or the center, non official members were allowed attendance, which meant that the total number exceeded from 50 to 60. British retained control, and also the provincial council number increased to 50. Now, the second part of the third question is regarding the Bengal partition. Now, in 1905, Bengal was partitioned by the British because of number of reasons. Firstly, it was one of the largest province with over 52 million people, which needed to be administratively controlled on a much more smaller scale. So the British thought that why not take this upon themselves and cut down the province and divide it. Now, with the 42 million Hindus of East Bengal, they were not happy with the partition. They thought that because of the partition, the British are doing their old mantra of divide and rule, to which none of the Indian leaders were very happy about. Muslims, on the other hand, liked the fact that they get to have their own dominant province. It was also the first taste of Muslims being a little autonomous in British India. So these are some of the points that can be talked about in this question. Now the part C is talking about, was the introduction of the Rowlatt Act in 1919 the sole cause of violence in India during the 1919 and 1920? Explain. Now again, it's asking about whether it was the sole cause of violence, which like addressed in the previous section, such questions are always leading you towards the fact that you have to elaborate about other things that happened at the same time. Now, India was a very violent place in 1919 due to a number of reasons. Firstly, not just the Rowlatt Act, but also there was the Amritsar massacre, and the Government of India Act of 1920 made the Indians very agitated. They basically were agitated by the lack of respect shown by the British. Second, they were of the view that the First World War shouldn't have involved Indian soldiers. And thirdly, another reason for the fact that they were angry and agitated and prone to violence was the fact that Britain failed to deliver on its promise. So again, Britain failed to deliver on its promise of self governance. The First World War shouldn't have been fought by Indians. And number three, the Indians felt they were being mistreated. So all of these reasons basically combine to talk about the fact that during the 1919, the whole subcontinent was basically agitated by the British themselves.